certain people follow different rules because they have more power. And I can tell you, as someone who's living in a country that is becoming that, it's not as nice at all. Now, obviously, I'm on the right side of that, so I guess I'm the beneficiary of it, but I still don't like it at all. I would much rather live in a country where, the people down the street who don't make as much as I do feel every bit as entitled to run their country as I do. Um, I saw that in Australia, and I loved it. I admired it. It made me wistful for what the United States once was. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. But I also left Australia with a kind of sadness, a sort of a poignant feeling, because I felt that Australia was changing a lot faster than Australians understand. And that there is something about the decency of Australians that leaves them vulnerable to change from the outside. And I saw when I was in Australia, a country that was maybe 10 years behind the United States in its evolution away from democracy. And I saw Australia being attacked in exactly the same way that my country has been attacked. And it's a really simple formula. The people who want to change your country, who want to take it away from you, use your best qualities against you. Australia is a deeply compassionate country. You don't shoot the birds that attack your mailmen. And as I said, so Australians have a deep desire to be compassionate, to be decent. What if you were to leverage that against them? What if you were to tell them that they had to obey, but rather than pulling out a gun and sticking it in their face and saying obey, because that's hard to do with Australians because they're tough people, they were Gallipoli. It's a tough society. That's not going to work. Instead, you said to Australians, if you're decent, if you're a good person, then you will do this. That might work. And in fact, it will work because it's worked in my country, which has the same Anglo culture of decency and fairness and compassion and egalitarianism. And in my country, which has both been invaded and whose social structure has been turned completely upside down, there were no guns involved. Our best qualities were leveraged against us. Oh, you must do this. You must accept that men can become women and gender is not a real construct, because if you don't, you're mean. And the last thing Americans want to be is mean because they think of themselves as nice. And I think Australia is very much the same. So then the question becomes, why would someone want to take over Australia? This is what I want to mention for a moment and have you think about. It's really simple what's going on in Australia. And it has to do not with your country specifically or your political system specifically, but it has to do with geopolitics and the basic rules of life. And the basic rule of life is that every country needs three things: food, water, and energy. Beyond anything else, you cannot have a civilization without food, water, and energy. And unfortunately for you, and this is a mixed blessing, Australia has the world's deepest reserves of energy and essential minerals. Australia has the deepest reserves of uranium, iron ore, lithium, coal, gold, oil and gas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Australia has the minerals the world needs. And in many cases, they are very close to the surface because of your geology and geography. They're easy to extract. They're cheap to extract. So there is no place on planet Earth richer than Australia. Now, of course, Australia is not an especially rich country because you've been prevented from extracting those essential minerals by forces within your own country. So, but keep in mind, Australia is the richest country in the world, fundamentally. You have deeper resources than anyone else, period. Why is this a problem? It's a problem because Australia has 26 million people. Less than 5,000 miles away, you have a country with 1.4 billion people. And that country with 1.4 billion people, too many people for its landmass, has the world's fastest growing economy and now the world's largest economy. And it doesn't have enough resources. That country is called China. So if you're China, you have to have China's resources. I mean, you can go to Africa, you can go to Latin America. Those are very far away. Australia's right there. It's less than 5,000 miles away. It's your neighbor. It is a lone outpost of English language and Western civilization in the middle of China's area of influence. So if you're China, you're going to take over Australia if you can. Now, of course, I'm not the first person to think of this. Strategists in Australia and the West have been thinking about this for a long time, and the solution has been to put an enormous American military base in the middle of Australia, which is rarely mentioned, but it's there, and it's there for a reason, and it's there to keep China at bay. And most people in Australia, when I mention this to them, think it's been pretty effective. We got the Americans here, and they're probably nuclear weapons, and like, we're safe. We're not going to be invaded. Well, I could have told you that. The Chinese are not going to invade your country with an armada of ships. They haven't even invaded Taiwan yet, which they think is theirs. And you could make a case that it is theirs. So they're not going to invade you. And by the way, why would you want to invade Australia? It's too big, and the people are too tough. Again, I refer you to Gallipoli, where in the service of the British Empire, an empire that has never treated you well, by the way. In fact, if you really want an enemy, it's Great Britain. That's my personal view. No offense or anything. But everybody knows that it's not worth getting in a fist fight with the Australians, either in a bar, or a war, because they're going to extract a cost. They're going to punch you in the face. So it's not worth it. They're never going to invade you. What they're going to do is subvert you. They're going to undermine you. They're going to take your country away from you incrementally, bit by bit, without you even knowing it. Now, how are they going to do that? Well, the very first thing they're going to do is buy off your politicians. What does it cost to invade a country? Well, we invaded Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan and Libya, and now we're doing the same, I guess, in Yemen. I mean, the United States loves to invade people. And it's extremely expensive. In fact, we are bankrupt as a result of invading people. So why would you do that when you could just buy off Canberra? So you take someone like Anthony Albanese. What does it cost to buy off some sort of low-grade spiv like Anthony Albanese? I don't know. I haven't tried. But my guess is you could probably buy Albanese for less than it costs to buy, say, a new Tesla. It's not expensive. This is a person with no job prospects, no obvious skills, who has the respect of nobody, including his wife. So it's like, why would you just buy him? And by the way, I'm not attacking, your prime minister. I'm not singling him out, or your lawmakers. I've actually visited Canberra and been up to your parliament, and there's some awfully nice people. Ralph is one of them, great guy. They're very much like the people who run my country, the legislators who run my country. They're people who, in a better economy would be selling used cars. But they can't. And so they're your lawmakers, and they get pensions. But it's all very, if I can just be honest with you, it's all very low grade. These are not impressive people. They're not making a ton of money. They're not creating anything. They're bureaucrats. And so what does it cost to buy them off? Oh, not very much. A lot less than it costs to invade. Now, I'm not saying your lawmakers have been bought off. I'm stating unequivocally they've been bought off. There's no question about it. And it's obvious in what's happening in your country. And the first reason you know that your government has been bought off by China is that your country is being invaded in a way that is designed to make you not notice. And you're being invaded through immigration, refugees, and legal immigrants. 200,000 a month. 200,000 a month. No country can sustain that level of immigration without falling apart, period. Especially not a country of 26 million. Now, if you think about it, and by the way, Australia being a very decent country, very much like Canada, very much like the United States, you're not encouraged to say anything about this, or you're a bad person because you're offering a better life to people, and like, how dare you not do that? What's never noted is that you are stealing the future of your children when you do that in a bunch of different ways. For one, the most obvious, your kids can't afford houses anymore. In Australia, just like the United States, you have a continental-sized landmass, and you had a ton of inexpensive, pretty, comfortable housing with space, with a little yard, nothing extravagant, but the average middle-class person could afford a house and then a spouse, and then children, and maybe a dog, and a lawn. All the things that the human heart desires, a little piece of my own, a place for my children to have children, and for our generations to continue. That's the true dream of every person, is to have grandchildren and then great-grandchildren and see, his line continue. That's the most basic desire that people have. And it's being stolen from you by immigration. Not because the immigrants are bad, just to be completely clear about it. I do not begrudge anybody moving from, say, Rawalpindi, Pakistan to Sydney, Australia. I've been to both cities. I'd much rather live in Sydney. I'm not mad at the guy from Rawalpindi. That's a completely rational choice on his part. And that's true in the United States. We've got a ton of people moving up from Latin America and from around the world, and all of them are leading better lives in the United States. Good for them. I get it. I'm not mad at them. I'm outraged at my lawmakers for allowing it, because in the US, as in Australia, most people's children can't afford to live anymore, because we have a principle that is encoded in nature called supply and demand. If you have less of something that people want, its price goes up. And housing, and there are a million other things, education, healthcare, infrastructure, all of them are under unsustainable pressure by the number of new people coming in. So your leaders have destroyed the hope of a future for your children. That alone merits a revolution, and I mean it. But being nice people, you've said almost nothing about it because you don't want to be racist. But it's not racist to say, I was born here, and my children, by virtue of their citizenship in this country, deserve a future. But the second effect, and this is the point, that mass immigration has on a country is that it steals its core. It eliminates the cohesion between people. You have, over time, this is true in the United States as well as Australia, and it's about to be very true for you, given the scale of immigration, you have nothing in common as a country when a huge percentage of your population just got there from somewhere else. You don't share a common language, a common religion. You don't share a common history. I'm sure there are many people in the audience listening tonight who had ancestors at Gallipoli. No one coming to your country did. And I know that Gallipoli is, one of many moments in Australian history that you recognize and celebrate, and you remember the bravery, the valiance of your ancestors. Will you do that in 50 years? Of course not. Because the guy from Rawalpindi doesn't know what that is. And why would he? It's not his fault. But it means that your country is changing so fast that there's no country in the end. There's just groups of people with nothing in common. That's not a country. That's a series of tribes. And the reason that you do that to a country is so you can take it over. Because you throw it off balance. There's no organized resistance. There can't be organized resistance to your program because there's no dominant group of people to resist it. And that's exactly what they're doing. This is being encouraged by the Chinese, and it's working because they're leveraging your decency against you. When I was in Australia, the thing that shocked me the most was I think it's called a land acknowledgement. I found it one of the most grotesque things I've ever seen, one of the most profound humiliation rituals I've ever witnessed in my life. Every time a meeting opens, I think the school day begins this way. Every time a commercial airliner lands, you come in on Qantas, and they announce that the land that you're on does not belong to you. And I thought to myself, who is this helping? Is it helping the indigenous community? If so, tell me how. When you say this doesn't belong to me, is someone in the indigenous community getting a job or a government grant? No. No one is benefiting except the people who seek to steal your country. And they are going to steal your country, and they're telling you so. When you are forced to say something is not yours, that means someone else is about to take it from you. If you're sitting at home one night and an armed group of people show up at your house with guns and say, henceforth, we would like you to say out loud every single day, this is not our house. That's not your house. And you say, but I paid for this house. I've got a mortgage on it. It's my house. No. They stick a gun in your face. Every day you repeat, this is not my house. What do you think their intention is? Why do you think they're asking you to do that? They're asking you to do that so they can steal your house. And when they do steal your house, you won't put up a fight because you've been trained to believe it's not your house. That's exactly what a land acknowledgement is. And that's also what the trans agenda is. That's also what the green agenda is. The trans agenda, of course, is designed to sow chaos. Again, it's a scenario in which nobody benefits. Does the trans kid who's been castrated or rendered sterile by puberty blockers, does that person benefit? No, his life is destroyed. What's the suicide rate among trans people? No one asks. It's the highest of any group. Because pumping a child full of dangerous drugs hurts the child, of course. How does castrating a child help anybody? No one. But what it does do is throw your society into chaos. If you can't acknowledge the most basic difference in nature, which is the difference between male and female, all of nature is predicated on that difference. And not just in the animal world, among plants. Everything comes down to the binary, male, female. And of course, human civilization is based on that as well, because it's inherent in nature. It's not something we made up. It's not a cultural construct. It's embedded in our genes. Your sex is determined by a blood test because it's at the cellular level. So why are they telling you otherwise? Because when you convince people that nature isn't real, that the laws of nature somehow don't apply, that your leaders, Anthony Albanese, that sleazy little creep, is somehow God and he can eliminate the difference between men and women or control nature, when you convince people of that, you throw them off balance and you sow chaos. And chaos is exactly what you want if you're taking over a country. It's exactly what you want. If you can confuse your enemy, you've won. And that's exactly, as I said, what the green agenda is. I want to say it once again. Australia is the richest country in the world. Uranium, gold, bauxite, iron ore, lithium. These are the things, copper, the deepest reserves in the world. These are the things you need to run a modern society, oil and gas. And you've been told that you can't use them? Because what? Coal is evil? You have the deepest coal reserves in the world, but you can't use it? Guess who is using it? China. They're happy to use it. You ship your coal to China. You've got more iron ore than any country and easier to extract iron ore than any country in the world. How many steel plants do you have? Let me just do the math. 0. Because you've been told you can't by the Greens. Oh, and because Australians love nature so much, because they appreciate God's creation so profoundly, which is, as I said at the outset, the best thing about them. Anyone who loves nature is a friend of mine. That's how I feel. Anyone who loves animals is a friend of mine because it shows a deep decency. It acknowledges perspective. God created this. I didn't. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to be its steward. These are the best impulses a person can have. But they've been leveraged against you and you've been disarmed. Well, you've literally been disarmed. You can't defend yourselves. You have no guns. So take 3 steps back. What is all of this? It's all connected. It is a predicate to take over. And the group taking you over is China. And I just want to say one thing. In the United States, there's a lot of talk about China and the threat that it poses to American preeminence in the world. And that is absolutely true. It does. Its economy is bigger than ours now. And it's more real than ours because they make things. And we just sell real estate and do banking, which are not, that's not a real economy. I get it. So Americans are very afraid and they're attacking China. I do not attack China. I'm not mad at China. I'm afraid of China. We all should be. But, like the immigrants who come to our country and I don't think they improve it. I'm not mad at those immigrants. And I'm not mad at China because China is acting in its own interest. And that's what I want my country to do. And that's what I want your country to do. And I'll just end with this because I get all spun up here. The solution to all of this is to find leaders who have a very simple goal. And that is to act on behalf of Australia. And that would seem self-evident. So you have what is often described as a democracy. I mean, of course, you've got a prime minister, we've got a president, you've got a parliament, we've got a Congress, whatever. It's the same system at its core because its central idea is that the people rule. Australians are in charge of their own country. If the majority of the Australian people want something. Over time, they will be granted it because they own Australia. They are not renters. They're not serfs. They're not slaves. They are citizens who are equity shareholders in their own nation. This is the idea that transformed the world. This is the idea that undergirds every democratic system. And it's certainly the core idea in Australia. And so, given that, you would imagine that every leader of Australia would be looking out first and foremost to the exclusion of all others for Australia. The point is, I'm running Australia. Every decision I make should be to the benefit of Australia. And of course, I'm speaking as an American. Our system's the same, and that's what we wanted. And for, I don't know, I'm 55, my entire lifetime, we are denied that. If you look at a list of the things that Americans care about and want, and it's easily found, it's called public opinion polling. You have it in your country as well. You can ask people, like, what are your top concerns? What do you want? Australians don't want 200,000 foreigners showing up in their country every month to make their lives unaffordable. They would like lower energy costs. They would like a more robust economy. They'd like cheaper housing. They don't want to see their community hospitals overwhelmed with foreigners. They paid for those hospitals. When they need to go to the hospital, they want medical care. This is true in every country. It's true in New Zealand. It's true in Canada. It's true in the UK. It's true in the United States. And in all of those countries, to varying degrees, they've been denied the things they want. And they've been instead told that the things that they're going to get are these abstract goals. Their government's going to end climate change. They're going to bring something called equity. They're going to, like invade a bunch of other countries. You, because you are such a sweet and loyal nation, have joined us in a bunch of foreign adventures around the world. You got not one thing out of it. Neither did we. No American benefited from the war in Iraq. No Australian benefited from the war in Iraq. There's agitation to start a new war with Iran. Trust me, no Australian will benefit from that either. And if we do it, I hope you don't join it. And no American will benefit either. So that's what we actually got. We told them what we wanted. We got something completely different. We got things that hurt us. How did that happen? Well, it happened because we were tricked into thinking that the two parties vying for power disagreed with each other on a fundamental level. And it turned out they didn't. I'll just speak for the United States. I'm not an expert on your politics, though I've watched it very carefully. In the United States, we have the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and we are told day in and day out, and this is the most insidious propaganda we're ever told, that these parties are at war with each other and they've got a different vision of the world and they pick these battles, they fight over whatever. They fight over the trans thing quite a bit, or Black Lives Matter, or some other manufactured nonsense. They're always trying to get you to hate each other on the basis of race. They call you a racist, but of course they inspire race hatred to keep you occupied so you don't notice while they're looting your country. That's the game, by the way. So we were told this for, 50, 60 years, that these two parties were in opposition to each other. And it was like this critical battle, and every election was the most important election of your lifetime. I'm sure you hear similar nonsense in your country. And right around, 2015, 2016 in the United States, people began to realize, wait a second, on the core questions that matter, and to restate, the core questions that matter are the economy and foreign policy. Where does your money come from and who do you kill? On those questions, the parties were completely aligned. They acted as one. It was the uniparty, as we say in the United States. One party, a one-party state. One-party states are by definition corrupt because no one's watching. No one's pushing back. They can do whatever they want, and they did. And so in the United States, what we did was, rather than create a third party, because that's difficult in our system, easier in yours, but in our system, it's very hard to create a third party. The two parties have made it very hard. We just snuck a guy in as the nominee of one party who didn't really represent that party. He represented effectively a third party, the People's Party, the party that wanted to deliver to people what they actually wanted. And what they wanted was an end to immigration, because it's destabilizing our country and lowering the standard of living for Americans. That's a fact. Wanted to end these incredibly counterproductive and totally immoral foreign wars. And he was this large orange man called Donald Trump. And he became president. And the response to him was so ferocious. I lived in Washington at the time. I can barely even describe it. And of course, you, I'm sure, saw this on your televisions. He was denounced as a racist. They always call you a racist. Whatever you think about Donald Trump, he's not a racist at all. In fact, he got a higher percentage of the non-white vote in the last election than any Republican ever since Abraham Lincoln. They called him a racist. Then they impeached him twice. They tried to kick him out of office. He was an elected president, and they tried to boot him out because they hated him so much. Then they indicted him and tried to send him to prison for the rest of his life on absurd charges. Charges so absurd, most Americans never understood what they were. They were made up. And then, of course, famously in July of last year, they tried to murder him. They shot him in the face at a rally. We still don't know how that happened, but on some sort of broader level, we know exactly how that happened. He challenged the status quo, and they tried to kill him twice. And I'm recounting what you know to remind you that if you're going to take on entrenched power in your own country, it's a very rough ride. You know, they don't like it at all. And they've had the system in place for a very long time, and they benefited from it. And a lot of kind of low IQ, mediocre people have very high paying jobs because of the system. So they'll fight like animals to keep the system in place. And in your case, you know, you've got the government of China, which is clearly bankrolling a lot of this stuff. So that worked for us, actually. And in the United States, we had this extraordinary person. Whenever you think, you know, you could like Donald Trump or not like him, but there's probably never been, well, there never has been in my lifetime, a political leader in any country who's persevered so doggedly through headwinds like that. It's almost unbelievable. And he was reelected. And now, and I'm sure you're watching this, he is going through the incredibly difficult process of trying to sort out what's been happening for the last 60 years. I mean, we don't even know who murdered our president, our elected president in 1963. We still haven't found out. But he's pledged to try and find out. But think about that. Our president was assassinated with the knowledge of his own government, elements within his own government, murdered. And every subsequent president from November 1963 until November of 2024 has kept that secret of both parties. What does that tell you? They're all in it together. If there's ever an assault on a democracy, it's the assassination of an elected leader. I mean, that's the most obvious assault on democracy, and they've kept it secret. But he's kept going, and he's made progress, and I think he'll make more progress. And, you know, we'll see. But above all, it is a triumph of the core promise of democracy, which is that the people have some say in how they're ruled. And you are very far from that. I'm not criticizing you, but I'm watching closely, and you are very far from that. And you need leaders who are willing to put your country first. And I'm just telling you, anybody who steps forward in Australia to do that and who means it, who's not just lying to you, who means it, who isn't joking, had better be ready for an extremely rough ride. But it will be worth it. And the last thing I'll say is that it's going to take someone who's willing to pay any cost to lead your country out of where it is right now. And I would argue that's always a prerequisite for leadership. The leader is the person who's willing to lay down his life for the people he leads. And that's not just true of national leaders. That's true of leaders at every level. That's what leadership is. It's the person who stands up and says, you are more important than I am. And if I need to literally die protecting you, serving you, I will. That's the definition of leadership. It's true in the home. The reason the father is the father is because if armed people come to the house to hurt his family, he will gladly die to protect his family. That is true in the military. The officer is in charge because he will die to protect his men, because he loves them. The father loves his children. The officer loves his men. They're willing to lay down their lives. That's true even in companies. Any leader who's not willing to give up everything he has for the people he leads should not be the leader, period, by definition. And so I just pray that your country, which is truly, having been to most countries in the world, I can say this authoritatively, truly one of the most beautiful, wonderful, sweetest places on planet Earth. And there aren't that many left. Your country needs that leader. And when you find that leader, you will have a chance. And I will be rooting for you just so fervently. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.